This FedGov Today program is sponsored by Okta and Carahsoft. Welcome back. The Defense Department has a roadmap now for acquiring the new software it needs. The department released its Software Modernization Implementation Plan for fiscal years 25 and 26 last week, along with establishing the Software Fast Track Initiative. George Lamb's Director of Cloud and Software Modernization in the Office of the CIO at DoD. At TechNet Cyber this week, I asked him how all those pieces fit together.
Yeah, the software modernization really came from, if you go 5 years ago, the DIB swap report, we realized software is never done. Fundamentally changing from legacy, fundamentally changing from programs that take 2 or 3 years before if you know they're failing or not. So we switched to the software modernization strategy. That evolved into 3 goals: software modernization, cloud, and culture. Those are the 3 fundamental. If you get those right, then you can start doing modernization. After the goals came out, we rolled into the software modernization implementation plan. We did a 2-year plan. We were very cognizant about not doing too much. Like, you want to make sure you have something that's achievable, and if you try and boil the ocean, it's not going to work. So we were aligned along the 3 goals. In the cloud space, things like JWCC, get to the cloud, looking at our OCONUS strategy. How are we going to actually, if you look at the business of the Department of Defense, it's OCONUS, it's CONUS. Its edge is probably leading, not like the typical cloud service providers where it's all regional with big regions. So we're aligning with that. In the software modernization, it's the software factories, getting consistency across the software factories, getting continuous ATO, so we're pushing out things consistently, getting things like reciprocity so we can interact, and the APIs so we can build programs like JADC2 and CJADC2. So that's kind of in the software. And in the culture space, it's keeping our people up to date, innovative contracts, so we're working with third parties. We're taking in government and non-government, sort of the best of the commercial space. So those are the goals. We did them. We kind of knocked it out of the park for 23 and 24. And then we started 25 and 26. The really interesting things in 25 or 26 is the foundation's still there, but we're looking at artificial intelligence and we're looking at legacy programs. We're kind of at that point in a transition over 5 years to no longer doing lighthouse programs, no longer doing pilots, but how do we take the proof that we've done in the past 2 years and turn that into the big programs? So I think we're kind of on that cusp, and we're going to have more documentation coming out. We got the plans. The next thing really come out is instructions. So instructions, goals, fundamentally changing how we lay down the law for developing software. And you can see that with the software acquisition pathway that Sean Brady was championing. Right now, there's law that says we really should follow the acquisition pathway. So changing from 2 to 3 to 4 year cycles to putting Agile in, cycles, DevSecOps, all those in the acquisition. We've got to follow that with how do you map that into the test community, the security community, the assurance community. There's lots of different places to fit in. Yes, all the documentation fits in. The last one that's really exciting, we're just coming out with it, I'm hoping it's on the website today, is the state of DevSecOps in the Department of Defense. That looks back, we worked with the Software Engineering Institute from Carnegie Mellon, looking back at 5 years to see where have we come to and where are we? How do we quantitatively assess where we are today? And use that to leapfrog and to keep making progress in the future. So lots of documentations, goals lead to plans, lead to assessment, lead to the future.
I want to talk about AI and legacy as written about in the 25-26 plan here in a moment. But before we get away from that, I want to ask you, you mentioned the software factories and getting consistency out of the software factories. What did you have to make consistent among the various services and their software factories? And what does that look like today?
Yeah. So if you look at our evolution, I kind of think like 4 years ago, we were startups. We had some software factories that kind of knew what they were doing. They kind of knew best practices. They just started building. They're cranking out stuff, Kessel Run, Platform One. They're all doing interesting work, but they're not really part of the ecosystem of the services. If you look at it today, all 3 services, probably the Navy in particular, the Navy did an assessment of all their software factories, found out what's working, what funding models, how do you decide which software factory to use? How do you have redundancy and consolidate that so we're not having inefficiencies and you really direct things? So all of the services are putting together cloud service offices or software modernization offices, and they're taking control of their portfolios and actually treating like a business entity. It's no longer the startup mentality where everyone's trying to figure out their own funding. It's no longer, I have a software factory. Who's my customer?
Yeah.
Which software factory did I go to? So now you go to the Navy and the Navy will direct you. Or you go to the Army and the work that Mr. Garciga is doing to put policy and really direct the most efficient, and I love what the Army is doing, the most secure. They've shut down some software factories that they didn't think were secure enough. And his experience from when he's in the intelligence space, he's bringing that to get really secure factories in the Army. And then same in the Air Force with the software directorate. So they've combined all of the separate software development efforts under the software directorate under Mike Jennings. And they're looking at how do I build a standard base for all of the organic work? And how do I use that to feed the factories for the F-16, the F-35, the bombers? So they're all using the same fundamental and tooling underneath. There's no longer, everyone's kind of do it themselves. They kind of share, but there's actually guidance on how to build these software factories. So it's really a maturation of the ecosystem for how they all work together, but really how the department manages these resources from the way the department works. Like the services have a lot of the authority, and they're taking control of some of the directives we put at the CIO, sort of encouraging this is the right way to do it, and now they're actually managing it. It's pretty exciting.
A lot more I'd like to cover there, but I do want to ask you about the 25-26 plan, and you mentioned AI and legacy are two big elements of that. Artificial intelligence was at a completely different place in fiscal 2023 when you wrote the first plan compared to where you are today. How do you allow in creating a plan like this for that kind of elasticity? We don't know where we might be halfway through fiscal year 26 with some of these technologies, or we might be pursuing something that we don't even know about today or aren't thinking about today.
The way that we're operating is guidance precedes policy. Right, so we do experimentation in the software space. We do lots of experiment. We build factories, and some fail, some are. And the lessons we take in AI, I think CDAO, they were trying to figure out how AI can be used in the department. What's the governance? Like, what's the ethical uses that make sense? So we've got a lot of good policies, understanding how it fits into the business model of the department. The thing that hasn't quite been as successful is how do you inject those models into real systems? So when I think AI from the software side, it's just software, right? There's nothing special about it. It's a package. It does some cool things. So we're looking at it two ways from the 25-26 plan. The thing we started out first is how do you use AI to build software faster? We call it AI for the software development lifecycle, or AI for SDLC. So if you look at the commercial space, you're hearing great efficiencies. Like one programmer using AI can be like 4 times more efficient. So those efficiencies come through tooling and how to implement AI. So we're putting a focus on the right tooling and the right ways to use AI to be more efficient. And that's one aspect, and that's where we started out first. So we got a team from MITRE that's helping us put down guidebooks and playbooks on how to get the teams more efficient. The second is where really the value comes from like when you hear the hype of AI, it's like making decisions. How do you get models and inject them into software? And the challenge in the department is how do you get any software and put it into production? Because it's not real. It's wasted software until it gets into production. These AI models, they have to have a way to get through a DevSecOps pipeline. They have to get through the testing process. They have to get into the field, and then the feedback has to come back. So that's where you can see the software methodology of DevSecOps married with the sort of the maturation of AI, looking at actually solving a problem that we care about is AI in production.
You mentioned the state of DoD DevSecOps. What do you think, I don't want you to get ahead of a document if you can't, but what do you think that state is right now, and what state would you like to see DevSecOps get to in the department?
Yeah, it's a really good question. The state, as I see it, is that maturation, right? We're at the point where there's actual offices that are established reporting directly to CIOs. So as a management, like we say the technology is possible. Like we knew the technology, that's been proven. There's really no question that we can get the speed with DevSecOps. The leadership, the ability to take programs that are now moving very quickly. So if the code is done in 2 months instead of 2 years, the system has to be able to accept that code in 2 months. So we're looking really at the maturation of the entire department on accepting the new capability. We've also proved the relevance of fast software. You look at the world today, what happens in Ukraine, the speed of decision making. We know we have to move at that pace. We know we have the technology to move at that pace. We've got the guidance that shows how to get there. But I think in the next year to 5 years, especially with the new administration, it's going to be changing the culture to accept what we can build and to move that into production very quickly.